What I wish I'd known, a story about honesty, choices, and the letters we don't send. In every house, there are stories tucked away in drawers, letters written but never sent, photographs kept but rarely looked at, truths known but carefully unspoken. Dorothy Chen's house on Maple Street held more of these quiet truths than most. At 68, she had lived long enough to accumulate a lifetime of carefully curated wisdom. Her house reflected this. Books lined every wall, their spines worn from repeated reading. Photographs chronicled 5 decades of marriage, 2 children, 4 grandchildren. Everything in its place, everything appropriate, everything just so. On a Sunday afternoon in late September, her granddaughter Lily sat across from her at the kitchen table, a laptop open between them, and the remnants of tea and cookies scattered on good china plates. "It's for my journalism ethics class," Lily explained, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. She had her grandmother's eyes, observant and thoughtful, but everything else about her vibrated with the particular energy of 20 years old. "Professor Martinez wants us to interview an older family member, someone who's lived through enough to have perspective." Dorothy smiled, pouring more tea. "And you thought of your ancient grandmother." "You're not ancient, and yes, I thought of you." Lily pulled up her laptop. "The assignment is kind of interesting, actually. I'm supposed to ask you to write a letter to your 20-year-old self. You know, advice you wish you'd known back then." Dorothy's hand paused, teacup halfway to her lips. 20 years old, 1976. A lifetime ago. "What kind of advice?" she asked carefully. "Anything. Wisdom, life lessons, things you learned the hard way." Lily was already typing notes. "Professor Martinez says that when we interview older people, we usually ask them to be wise and perfect. But the best stories come from honesty, not perfection. So he wants letters, real ones, about real choices." Real choices. Dorothy set her teacup down with careful precision. "That sounds like a thoughtful assignment," she said. "I'd be happy to help." "Really? That's great." Lily's face lit up. Then her expression shifted, became more uncertain. "Grandma, can I ask you something else? Not for the assignment, just for me?" "Of course, sweetheart." Lily was quiet for a moment, choosing her words. "How did you always know what to do? When you were my age, I mean. How did you make big decisions?" Dorothy recognized the tone, the weight behind the casual question. "What's going on, Lily?" "It's Jake." Lily traced the rim of her teacup. "He got a job offer in Seattle. Really good job, great opportunity. He asked me to come with him. And I don't know what to do." The words tumbled out. "I love him. I think I love him. But Seattle is so far away, and I'd have to leave school, or transfer, or take a year off. My whole life is here. My friends, my family, my plans. But if I don't go, what if I lose him? What if this is my only chance at this kind of love?" She looked up at her grandmother, eyes pleading for certainty. "What would you do?" Dorothy felt the familiar weight of expectation, the need to say something wise, something helpful, something grandmother appropriate. "Follow your heart, sweetheart," she heard herself say. "Think about what truly makes you happy. The right choice will become clear if you listen to yourself." Even as she said it, she knew it was insufficient. Platitudes wrapped in gentle certainty, the kind of advice that sounded profound but offered no actual guidance. Lily's face fell slightly, trying to hide disappointment. "Right, yeah. Listen to my heart. Thanks, Grandma." She closed her laptop, began gathering her things. So, about the letter. Would you be able to write it this week? The project is due in 2 weeks, so I need time to write up the interview portion. Of course. I'll have it ready by next Sunday. They hugged at the door. Lily's embrace was warm but distracted, her mind already somewhere else. Probably Seattle. Probably Jake. Probably the impossible question of what to do when every choice feels both right and wrong. Dorothy stood at the window, watching her granddaughter drive away. She thought about Lily's question. How did you always know what to do? If only the girl knew the truth. Dorothy had never known what to do. Not at 20, not at 30, not even now at 68. She had simply made choices. Some good, some less so. Some she didn't regret. Some she thought about late at night when sleep wouldn't come and the past felt closer than the present. She thought about the letter she'd promised to write, advice to her 20-year-old self. What would that even look like? Dear 20-year-old Dorothy, she imagined writing. You have no idea what you're doing. You'll make choices that feel impossible. You'll wonder if you chose wrong. You'll spend 40 years questioning a single decision made in the span of a single week. No, she couldn't write that. That wasn't what grandmothers said. That wasn't wisdom. That was just truth. And truth, she had learned, was not always the same as wisdom. From the doorway, her husband Harold appeared, a book tucked under his arm. At 70, he moved slower than he once had, but his eyes were still kind. Still patient, still understanding in ways that made Dorothy grateful and guilty in equal measure. Working on Lily's assignment? He asked, trying to figure out what to say. Harold settled into the chair across from her. Tell her the truth. Dorothy looked at him sharply. The truth? About the choices you made, about being 20 and uncertain, about not having all the answers. He smiled gently. That's what she needs to hear, not platitudes. Truth. I can't tell her that. I'm her grandmother. She needs me to be wise, not confused. She needs you to be human. Harold reached across and squeezed her hand. But write whatever you think is best. You always do. He left her there, sitting at her desk with a blank page and too many memories. For the next week, Dorothy returned to that desk again and again. She filled pages with wisdom and encouragement. She wrote about following dreams and trusting intuition. She crafted careful sentences about the importance of authentic choices and meaningful relationships. And each time it felt hollow, like she was writing a greeting card instead of a letter, like she was telling Lily what a grandmother should say, not what her 20-year-old self actually needed to hear. The wastebasket beside her desk filled with crumpled drafts, each one a little more honest, each one a little less acceptable. By the end of the week, she had 2 letters, the one she would give to Lily, and the ones she wouldn't. The perfect letter, and the true ones. She had no idea that her granddaughter would find both. The following Sunday, Lily returned just as Dorothy was setting out fresh tea and the same cookies. Harold had made himself scarce, claiming he needed to work in the garden, though Dorothy suspected he simply wanted to give them privacy. I finished it, Dorothy said, sliding an envelope across the table. The paper was cream-colored, expensive. Her handwriting flowed across the front in careful script. To my 20-year-old self. Lily's eyes lit up. Thank you so much, Grandma. Can I read it now? Of course. Dorothy watched as her granddaughter opened the envelope and unfolded the single page inside. Lily's expression was intent as she read, and Dorothy knew every word by heart because she'd rewritten them so many times. Dear 20-year-old Dorothy, as I write this from nearly 50 years in your future, I want you to know that the journey ahead of you will be beautiful. Not always easy, but beautiful. Trust your intuition. It knows more than you give it credit for. Life will present you with choices that feel impossible. But remember that every path leads somewhere meaningful if you walk it with an open heart. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. They are how we learn to be wise. Surround yourself with people who see your worth and reflect it back to you. Love boldly. Work hard. Find joy in small moments. You will become someone you can be proud of, not because you'll be perfect, but because you'll be authentically yourself. The future is waiting for you, and it's full of more love and possibility than you can imagine. With wisdom and affection, your 68-year-old self. Lily looked up, her smile polite but uncertain. This is beautiful, Grandma, really beautiful. But? Dorothy could hear the unspoken word. No, there's no but. It's perfect. Lily folded the letter carefully, slid it back into the envelope. It's exactly what I expected you'd say. The words landed with more weight than Lily probably intended. Exactly what I expected. Not what she needed. What was expected. Will it work for your assignment? Dorothy asked. Absolutely. It's wonderful, inspiring. Lily was already putting the envelope in her bag, her movements efficient, professional. Professor Martinez will love it. Thank you so much. They talked for a few more minutes about the project, about Lily's other classes, about safe topics that required no depth. But Dorothy could see it. The distance, the disappointment her granddaughter was trying to hide. When Lily left, Dorothy returned to her study. Harold was there, sitting in the reading chair, a book open but clearly unread. Did you give her the letter? He asked. I did. And? She said it was beautiful. Harold looked at her for a long moment. Did you give her the real one? Dorothy sank into her desk chair. I gave her the appropriate one. He stood, walked to the wastebasket, and pulled out one of the crumpled pages, smoothed it carefully, read aloud. Dot, this is the one that matters. This one right here. He set it on her desk. This is what she needs. Dorothy looked at the wrinkled page, covered in her own handwriting, words crossed out and rewritten, honest and messy and true. I can't give her that. I'm her grandmother. You're also human, and she needs to know that. After he left, Dorothy sat alone with the letter. With all the letters she'd written and thrown away, each one more honest than the one before, each one revealing more of the truth she'd spent 40 years carefully managing. The truth about being 20 and terrified, about making a choice that felt impossible, about living with that choice for nearly 5 decades, and still sometimes, late at night, wondering what if. She picked up the crumpled page Harold had retrieved, began to smooth it out. Maybe if Lily somehow saw these, she would understand. She would know that her grandmother wasn't wise and certain, just human, just someone who'd made the best choice she could with the information she had and the courage she could muster. But no, these letters would stay in the trash, where they belonged. Dorothy returned the page to the wastebasket and went to help Harold in the garden. She had no way of knowing that in 3 days Lily would return, that she would be alone in this study. That curiosity and frustration would lead her to that wastebasket. that everything Dorothy had carefully hidden for 40 years was about to be revealed. 3 days later, Lily sat in her apartment staring at her grandmother's letter. She'd read it a dozen times, trying to find something in it that would help, some hidden wisdom she'd missed. But it remained exactly what it appeared to be: beautiful, appropriate, and utterly useless. Trust your intuition, love boldly, find joy in small moments. What did any of that mean when you were 20 years old and the boy you loved was moving across the country, and you didn't know if you should follow your heart or your head, or just flip a coin because both choices felt equally impossible? She'd hoped for more from her grandmother. Dorothy always seemed so certain, so clear about life, like she'd navigated every fork in the road with confidence and never looked back. Lily realized she'd left her scarf at her grandmother's house, the green one Jake had given her. She needed it back, needed to decide whether to keep it or return it along with her answer to his question. She drove to Maple Street, pulled into the driveway. The house was quiet. Through the window, she could see Dorothy and Harold in the back garden, both bent over what looked like rose bushes. Lily let herself in with the key her grandmother had given her years ago, called out but got no answer. They must not have heard. The scarf wasn't in the kitchen or the living room. Lily made her way to the study, the room where they'd had tea and where she'd received the letter that had been so perfectly unhelpful. There, on the back of the door, her green scarf. She grabbed it, was about to leave when something caught her eye. The wastebasket beside the desk, overflowing with crumpled paper. Lily knew she shouldn't. It was invasive, none of her business. But her grandmother had thrown away so much paper, all those drafts before arriving at the perfect polished letter. And maybe in those discarded attempts, there was something real, something true. Lily reached into the basket, pulled out the first crumpled page, smoothed it carefully. The handwriting was her grandmother's, but messier than the final letter. Words crossed out, sentences started and abandoned. She began to read. Dear 20-year-old Dorothy, you're going to choose safety, and it's going to be okay. No, wait, that's not true. Michael was wonderful. You'll choose safety over dreams, and no, you won't regret it, but you'll remember. Lily's heart began to pound. Michael? Who was Michael? She reached for another crumpled page, and another. Soon she was sitting on the floor, surrounded by drafts, reading fragments of a story she'd never known. There had been 2 men, Michael and Harold. Michael was an artist. He'd invited Dorothy to New York. Harold had offered stability. She'd chosen Harold. But the way these letters described it wasn't a clear choice. It was agonizing, uncertain, made from fear as much as from wisdom. One page in particular made Lily's throat tight. You'll tell yourself you're choosing Harold because he's right for you, but really, you're choosing him because Michael terrifies you. Michael is all possibility and no guarantees. Harold is all certainty and no surprises. You're 20 years old and you'll choose knowing over feeling, and your life will be beautiful, but it will be quieter than you dreamed. Another page, this one less crumpled, as if Dorothy had smoothed it out and read it several times before discarding it again. Dear 20-year-old Dorothy, I need to tell you something I've never told anyone, not even Harold, though I think he knows. You're going to choose safety, and here's what I wish I could tell you. It's okay to choose safety. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to not be brave enough for the big, scary, beautiful dream. But please, please stop pretending you're choosing from wisdom. You're choosing from fear. And there's nothing wrong with fear. Fear is honest. Michael scares you because with him there are no guarantees. Harold comforts you because with him you know exactly what you're getting. You'll spend 40 years pretending you chose right because Harold was the better man. But that's not true. They were both good men. You chose right because you chose what you could handle at the time. I don't regret choosing Harold, but I do mourn the girl who could have danced in New York instead of stamping books in Willow Creek. Lily was crying now, tears spotting the old paper. This was her grandmother, the woman who always knew what to do, who always had the right answer. She heard footsteps and looked up to see Dorothy frozen in the doorway, a basket of flowers in her hands. Lily? Her grandmother's face had gone pale. What are you doing? Lily held up the pages. Reading the truth, finally. Dorothy's hands trembled. The basket slipped, flowers scattering across the floor. Those weren't meant for you. But I needed them, Grandma. Lily stood, still clutching the crumpled letters. This is what I needed. Not the perfect letter. These honest, messy, real letters. Lily, I can explain. You don't have to explain. You have to tell me the whole story. Lily's voice was gentle but firm. Please, who was Michael? What happened? I need to know. Dorothy looked at the pages in her granddaughter's hands, at 40 years of carefully guarded truth spilled across the floor of her study. And slowly, carefully, she sat down. All right, she said quietly. I'll tell you, all of it. Dorothy had not spoken about Michael Chen to anyone in 40 years. Not to her children, not to her friends. Harold knew, of course. Harold had always known. But they'd never discussed it directly, maintaining a polite fiction that Dorothy's past had begun the day they met. Now, with her granddaughter sitting across from her surrounded by discarded truths, Dorothy felt something crack open inside her. Not painfully, more like relief. I met Michael at an art exhibition, she began. Her voice was steadier than she'd expected. September 1975. I was 20 years old, working part-time at the library while taking classes at the community college. A friend dragged me to this gallery opening. I'd never been to anything like it. I didn't know anything about art. Lily was silent, listening with the intensity of someone who'd waited her whole life for this story. Michael was standing in front of this painting. Abstract, lots of blue and gold. I didn't understand it at all, but I stopped anyway because he was so absorbed. Like the painting was speaking to him in a language only he could hear. Dorothy could still see him. 23 years old, paint-stained jeans, dark hair a little too long, an intensity that had both attracted and frightened her. I said something stupid, asked if he understood what the painting meant. He turned to me and smiled and said, I don't think it means anything. I think it feels something. And then he spent the next hour teaching me how to look at art, not to understand it, just to feel it. You fell in love with him, Lily said softly. Immediately, completely, terrifyingly. Dorothy's smile was rueful. He was everything I wasn't. Creative, free, certain about his dreams. He lived in this tiny apartment above a bakery. It smelled like bread all the time. He painted enormous canvases and could barely afford paint. He survived on cheap coffee and dreams of New York. And you? I was practical, responsible. I'd never taken a risk in my life. My father had died when I was 17. I helped my mother pay bills. I was going to get my library science degree, work steady, help my family. I had a plan. Dorothy paused, gathering the next part of the story. The hard part. Michael and I dated for almost a year. It was the most alive I'd ever felt. He'd take me to galleries, to poetry readings in basement cafes, to parks at midnight to look at stars. He made the whole world feel bigger, more possible. What did your family think? They worried. My mother liked him but thought he was impractical. Artists don't make good husbands, she'd say. You need stability, Dorothy. Security. Dorothy stood, moved to the window. The garden outside was peaceful. 50 years of careful cultivation. In August 1976, Michael got an opportunity. A friend had a gallery in New York. Real gallery, real exposure. He was going. His dream was finally happening. She turned to face Lily. He asked me to come with him. What did he say? Dorothy closed her eyes, remembering. He said, "Come with me to New York. We'll live in a tiny apartment and eat nothing but ramen, and I can't promise you anything except that we'll be together and we'll be free." He was so excited, so certain. And what did you say? I said I'd think about it, that I needed time. Dorothy's voice grew quieter. I was terrified, Lily. Terrified of leaving my mother, of leaving everything I knew. Terrified of depending on someone who lived on dreams and paint fumes. Terrified of failing, of it not working out, of being stranded in a city where I knew no one. That's understandable. Is it? Or is it just cowardice dressed up as wisdom? Dorothy shook her head. While I was paralyzed by fear, something else happened. Harold asked me out. Grandpa. Yes. Harold worked at the library. He was an engineer designing HVAC systems. Steady job, steady income, steady everything. He'd liked me for months, finally got up the courage to ask me to dinner. I said yes because it felt safe, because with Harold I knew what I was getting. Dorothy sat back down, folding her hands. I dated them both for 2 weeks. It was terrible. Michael knew about Harold but thought it was nothing serious. Harold knew about Michael and thought I'd never actually choose the struggling artist over practical security. But you had to choose. Michael was leaving September 15th. Harold proposed August 31st. Dorothy's laugh was brittle. 12 days. I had 12 days to decide between the biggest dream I'd ever had and the safest choice I could make. She could feel Lily hanging on every word. This was the story she'd never told, the one that explained everything. On September 14th, the night before Michael was leaving, I packed a suitcase. I was going to do it. Go to New York. Be brave. Choose the dream. What stopped you? I went to tell my mother, to say goodbye. I found her crying in the kitchen. She said, "Dorothy, if you go, I'll support you, but please know that you'll be throwing away certainty for possibility, and possibility doesn't pay rent." Dorothy's voice cracked slightly. I was 20 years old. My father was dead. My mother was alone. And I was scared. So scared. You stayed. I stayed. I unpacked my suitcase. In the morning, I called Michael and told him I wasn't coming. He didn't argue, didn't beg. He just said, "I understand. I'll miss you, Dot. Take care of yourself." And then he left. And 3 weeks later, I called Harold and said yes to his proposal. We were married in December. Dorothy met Lily's eyes. I've been married to your grandfather for 47 years. We built a good life, a beautiful life. I don't regret it. But I think about Michael. Not every day, not even every week. But sometimes, late at night, or when I hear certain songs, or see paintings that remind me of the ones he used to make. Dorothy's voice was steady now, honest. I wonder who I could have been if I'd been braver, if I'd chosen feeling over knowing. Lily wiped at her tears. Did you ever see him again? Dorothy nodded slowly. Once, 10 years later, I was at a library conference in New York. I saw his name on a gallery poster. His work was being exhibited. I went. She could still remember walking into that gallery, seeing Michael's paintings on the walls, seeing him successful and vibrant, talking to collectors. He saw me. We got coffee. He asked if I was happy. I said yes. He said, "I'm glad. I would have loved for you to be with me." But I'm glad you're happy. Dorothy swallowed hard. I went back to my hotel room and cried for 3 hours. Did Grandpa know? I told him when I got home. He held me and said, "I know you didn't choose me from passion, but you choose me every day after. That's what matters." At that moment, Harold appeared in the doorway. He'd been listening. His eyes were gentle, understanding. 47 years, he said quietly. She's chosen me for 47 years, not from fear, from love. It grew, it changed, but it's real. Lily looked between them. So you don't regret it? Either of you? Dorothy and Harold exchanged a glance. I don't regret the life I built, Dorothy said carefully. But I do regret that I built it from fear instead of from love. If I could go back, I would choose Harold again. But I would do it bravely, not from terror. I would choose him because I wanted him, not because I was afraid of Michael. She looked at her granddaughter. That's what I wish I'd known. That it's not about choosing right or wrong. It's about choosing honestly, from love, not from fear. Because the life you build on fear is always lighter than the one you build on truth. After Dorothy's confession, the three of them sat in silence. Harold made fresh tea. Dorothy stared at her hands. Lily tried to process everything she'd heard. Finally, Lily spoke. I'm doing the same thing, aren't I? Dorothy looked up. What do you mean? Jake, Seattle. I'm not deciding between what I want. I'm deciding between what I'm afraid of more. Lily's voice was clear, certain in a way it hadn't been before. I've been asking myself, should I go to Seattle or stay here? But that's not the real question. What is the real question? Harold asked gently. The real question is, what do I want? Not what scares me less, not what's safer or easier. What do I actually want? Dorothy felt something loosen in her chest. And what do you want, Lily? Lily was quiet for a long moment. Then she laughed, surprised and a little amazed. I don't want to go to Seattle. I don't want to go even a little bit. Because you're afraid. No. I mean, yes, I'm afraid. But that's not why. Lily stood, began pacing. I've been so focused on not wanting to lose Jake that I forgot to ask if I want what he wants. And I don't. I don't want to live in Seattle. I don't want to leave school. I don't want to put my life on hold for someone else's dream. What do you want? Dorothy asked again. I want to finish my journalism degree here. I want to write about people in this town, their stories, like yours. Lily's voice grew stronger. I want to build my life in the place I love, not follow someone to a place that's theirs. And if Jake and I are meant to be together, we'll find a way. but I'm not going to choose him from fear of being alone. Dorothy stood, walked to her granddaughter, took her hands. Then you've already made your choice. But what if I regret it? What if he's the love of my life and I'm letting him go? You might regret it, Dorothy said honestly. You might wonder what if, but you won't wonder if you chose honestly. And that's the difference. That evening, Lily sat in her car outside her apartment for 20 minutes before she made the call. Jake answered on the second ring. Hey, I was hoping you'd call. Have you thought about Seattle? I have. Lily took a deep breath. Jake, I love you, but I'm not going to Seattle. Silence on the other end. Then, because you're scared? No, because my life is here. My dream is here. Writing about this place, these people. And I can't build my life around your dream and expect to be happy. So this is it. We just end? I think we have to. Not because we don't love each other, but because we want different things. And if I go with you, I'll resent you. And if you stay for me, you'll resent me. And that's not love. Jake was quiet for so long Lily thought he might have hung up. Then, I wish you'd come, but I respect this. You're choosing you. That's brave. I don't feel brave. You are, though. His voice was sad but warm. Good luck, Lily. Write beautiful stories. Good luck in Seattle. They hung up. Lily cried in her car for 30 minutes. Not because she'd made the wrong choice, but because the right choice still hurt. The next morning, she drove back to her grandmother's house. Dorothy was in the garden again, Harold beside her, both of them working the soil together the way they had for decades. I told him, Lily said. We broke up. Dorothy stood, brushed dirt from her hands. How do you feel? Sad, but sure. I feel sure, Grandma. For the first time in months, I feel sure. Good. That's good. Thank you for being honest with me, for showing me that it's okay to not have all the answers, that being human is enough. Dorothy pulled her granddaughter into a hug. You're going to be fine, Lily. Better than fine. You're going to be true, and that's everything. 3 months passed. The semester continued. Lily threw herself into her journalism classes. She missed Jake sometimes, late at night, but she didn't regret her choice. And she had an idea. Professor Martinez's journalism ethics class met in a seminar room with tall windows. On a cold December morning, Lily stood at the front, her final project displayed on the screen behind her. The headline read, What I Wish I'd Known, Lessons from My Grandmother's Drafts. She'd written about Dorothy's letters, about the perfect one and the honest ones, about Michael and Harold, and choices made from fear versus choices made from love, about her own choice with Jake and what her grandmother's story had taught her. We ask older people to be wise, Lily concluded, to have answers, to be certain. But the wisest thing my grandmother ever did was show me her uncertainty, her fear, her doubt. She taught me that being human is more valuable than being perfect. The class was silent when she finished. Then Professor Martinez started clapping. The other students joined in. Afterward, he pulled her aside. This is exceptional work, Lily. Have you considered submitting it to the university paper? I thought about it. But I wanted to ask my grandmother first. That afternoon, Lily sat in Dorothy's study, the same room where she'd found the crumpled letters 3 months ago. You wrote about us? Dorothy asked, reading the article on Lily's laptop. I did. About you and Grandpa. About Michael. About honesty versus wisdom. Is that okay? Dorothy read slowly, carefully. When she finished, her eyes were wet. It's more than okay. It's beautiful. She looked at Lily. Publish it. Let other people know that it's all right to be uncertain, to choose imperfectly, to be human. The article ran in the university paper. Then it was picked up by a regional outlet, then a national one. It touched something in people, the story of a grandmother who'd hidden her doubt for decades, and a granddaughter who'd found freedom in that hidden truth. Letters poured in, women in their 60s and 70s writing to say they too had wondered about roads not taken, young people writing to say they felt less alone in their uncertainty. One letter Dorothy kept on her desk, read almost daily. I've been married 52 years. Sometimes I think about the man I didn't marry. I thought this made me a bad wife. Your story taught me I'm just human. Thank you. One evening, as Dorothy sat in her study reading these letters, she felt moved to write one more. The real one. The one she should have written from the beginning. She pulled out fresh paper, picked up her pen, and began. Dear 20-year-old Dorothy, you're going to choose safety, and it's going to be okay. You'll spend 40 years wondering if you chose wrong. That's okay too. Here's what I wish I'd known. Choosing from fear doesn't make the choice wrong, but it makes it heavier to carry. Next time you face a choice, choose from love. Love for yourself, for your life, for the person you're with. Harold will love you for 47 years and counting. Not because you chose him first, but because you choose him every day after that. Because love isn't just the choosing. It's the continuing to choose. Michael will live in your dreams. That's not a betrayal of Harold. It's just proof that the heart has room for different kinds of love, for what was, and what could have been, and what actually is. You'll be a good mother, a good wife, a good grandmother. But you'll also be a woman who sometimes looks out the window and wonders. And that's okay. That's human. You'll become someone you're proud of. Not because you did everything right, but because when it mattered, you were finally honest. With love and acceptance, your 68-year-old self. She folded it carefully, didn't throw it away this time. Instead, she put it in an envelope, walked to Lily's apartment, and slid it under the door with a note. The real one. Finally. Thank you for making me brave enough to write it. The next morning, Dorothy woke to a text from Lily. Thank you, Grandma, for everything, for being human. I love you. Harold was already awake, reading in bed. Dorothy showed him the text. You gave her the honest letter, he said. It wasn't a question. I did. Good. That's the one that matters. Dorothy reached into her nightstand, pulled out an old photograph, one she'd kept hidden for decades. A picture from 1976. She and Michael at that first gallery, both young and full of impossible dreams. I'm going to show this to Lily, she said, the next time she visits. Harold looked at the photo, at Dorothy young and vibrant beside a man who wasn't him. He smiled. You look happy. I was happy. And I'm happy now. Both things can be true. Both things are true. Dorothy put the photo on her nightstand. No more hiding. No more pretending she'd always been certain, always wise, always sure. She was human. She'd chosen. She'd wondered. She'd loved in different ways. She'd been brave and cowardly and everything in between. And all of it, every uncertain choice and late-night doubt and moment of wondering, had brought her here, to this life, this love. this moment of finally being honest. Later that week, Lily came for tea. Dorothy showed her the photograph. Lily held it carefully, looking at her grandmother's young face. "You look so happy," Lily said. "I was. And I am. Both truths can exist together. Do you still think about him?" "Sometimes. Less now. But yes, sometimes. Does it make you sad?" Dorothy thought about this. "No. It makes me human. And that's enough." Lily smiled, set down the photo. "I'm writing a follow-up article about what happened after the first one was published, about all the letters people sent, about how being honest about uncertainty helps others feel less alone." "That sounds wonderful." "There's something else." Lily pulled out her laptop. "I got an internship offer at a paper in Seattle." Dorothy's heart skipped. "Jake's in Seattle." "I know, but that's not why I'd go. I'd go because it's a good opportunity. And if I go, I'll go for me, not for him. Are you going?" "I don't know yet. I'm thinking about it." Honestly this time, asking what I want, not what I'm afraid of. Dorothy reached across the table, took her granddaughter's hand. "Whatever you choose, choose it truly. That's all that matters. I learned that from you. You learned it from my mistakes." "No," Lily said firmly. "I learned it from your honesty about your mistakes. That's the gift, Grandma. Not wisdom. Truth." After Lily left, Dorothy sat at her desk. The wastebasket was empty now. No more crumpled letters. No more hidden truths. She thought about the girl she'd been at 20, terrified and certain and wrong about so many things. She thought about the choices she'd made and the ones she hadn't, the love she'd had and the ones she'd walked away from. And she thought about what she'd learned in 68 years of being human. That wisdom isn't about always knowing the right answer. It's about being honest when you don't. That the most valuable gift you can give someone isn't certainty. It's the truth of your own uncertainty. That being human, with all its doubt and fear and imperfection, is not a weakness. It's the only way to live. Dorothy picked up her pen and wrote one final line in her journal. "Sometimes the wisest letter is the one that admits, 'I don't know. I was afraid. I'm still not sure.' And that's okay." She closed the journal. Outside, Harold was working in the garden, tending to the roses they'd planted together 40 years ago. Some had bloomed. Some had failed. All of them had been tended with love. Dorothy joined him, kneeling in the soil beside him, their hands working together in comfortable silence. This was her life, the one she'd chosen from fear and built with love, the one she'd questioned and ultimately claimed. It wasn't the life she'd dreamed at 20, but it was real and true. And finally, after 40 years of hiding and wondering, she could say it was enough. It was more than enough. It was hers. The seed. A final note. This story is about the letters we write and don't send, the truths we hide and eventually reveal, the choices we make from fear, and the ones we make from love. If you're listening to this, know that it's okay to be uncertain. It's okay to wonder about roads not taken. It's okay to choose imperfectly and live with doubt. The wisest thing you can do is not to have all the answers. It's to be honest about not having them. That's what makes us human. And being human is enough.